Okie dokie, it's time for another Battle Avionic, and this time we're going to be talking about Fiery Phoenix. Fiery Phoenix to me is not a particularly good Battle Avionic. There are some things that I really think need to change because it is currently in a bit of a weak state, which is why I'm talking about it right now before I get into the state of Battle Avionics as a whole. That way I can just go into detail with some of the things that I want to change and then kind of just do a bit more of a broad statement when I get to that particular video so we don't bulk that video down to about half an hour of pure gibberish. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Fiery Phoenix is a third slot Battle Avionic where you, quote, leave a trail of fire, dealing 300 damage per second to enemies. Gain 20% speed and 30% damage reduction while active. You would then be able to accumulate 100 damage per second that unleashes upon deactivation over 275 meters. Now, this ability is very unique in the sense that it is the only third slot Battle Avionic that costs 50 flux energy on use, and it's the only Battle Avionic currently that has an energy drain. So here we are in free space, and the ability is very straightforward. You press 3, your entire UI goes on fire, and now you are able to fly a lot faster, well, at least a little bit faster, and your ship is rather tanky. Now, I can't really confirm the tankiness aspect of my ship, but it does seem that when I have it on, my shields don't seem to take as much of a beating, and my hull certainly does not seem to find itself nearly as much in the catastrophic failure state as opposed to normal situations where I'm not using Fiery Phoenix. Now, obviously, because of the way that Fiery Phoenix works, it probably makes the most sense to pair it with something like Particle Ram, although you might not be able to see the fact that I have actually activated Particle Ram. So, by turning off Fiery Phoenix, we know for a fact that I do have Particle Ram, and then using Fiery Phoenix essentially means that you have Particle Ram, plus you have Fiery Phoenix, so you do have a trail of fire behind you as you move, plus you also have a giant ram in front of you, so that you get to do damage, and you also get to move faster, and you have a tankier ship, so that is a pretty good combo. Plus, of course, outside this is what the ship would look like, so ignoring the Particle Ram for just a second, the Fiery Phoenix actually does have a bit of a phoenix form going. Not really as much of a bird look as you would expect, but we still have some wing flames over there, and we have a sort of head flame, but it's not really like a head flame per se. Still, it does look a little bit like a phoenix. So like I said, this ability is not particularly good. Right now, there seems to be some weird mechanics involved in it that are either pointless or just seem to be like last-minute additions that don't really fit with it. So DE needs to figure out what is the point of this ability. Is it meant to be a high damage sustain ability, as opposed to, for example, Seeker Volley being a high damage sort of burst ability if it ever gets buffed? Or is it meant to be maybe the super duper tankiness extra speed ability, in which case that could be a very interesting addition to the third slot Battle Avionics. So aside from that, I also don't like that 5 energy per second drain. I don't particularly like energy drain abilities to begin with, because I actually value energy above a lot of things, but 5 per second seems really high, especially since there's no way of mitigating that through efficiency mods or even duration mods or anything of that sort. And of course, as you may have guessed, I can't actually see where the bloody hell I'm going when I have all those flames in the pilot UI. So obviously, first off, that thing we might be able to rectify by having different color flames, especially in the Veil. It becomes almost impossible to figure out where you are. If you happen to be doing the sentient ship thing, then it becomes really difficult to figure out even where the sentient ship is, to the point where you actually turn the Fiery Phoenix off. In its current state, if you turn off the Fiery Phoenix, then you essentially blow a giant amount of time just building up, I guess, minuscule damage ultimately, so there's a problem with that as well. But the fact that I have to turn off an ability just to be able to see where the bloody hell I'm going is not a particularly good idea. So either change the color of the flame or reduce the amount of flames that are in the pilot view. Now let's assume that DE wanted this to be a damage ability. Obviously, the trail damage is not going to work at all. Right now, the reason why trail damage works for Nezha's Firewalker, to some extent, although I don't think anyone really cares about it, is because enemies currently just run forward and backward, left and right, and various forms of diagonal. So at some point they could probably hit it. Maybe. If it's an open world, maybe not. But if it's a corridor, for example, then yeah, sure, they might be able to, at some point, walk across those flames and get hit and take a little bit of damage. But in open space, not only do enemy fighters go left and right to avoid and forward and backward to avoid a flame, they also go up and bloody down to avoid a flame. Which means there's so much space that a fighter ship, an enemy fighter ship, can travel around just to avoid the flames. that the trail fire becomes functionally useless. Currently, it is only 300 damage a second, which is absolutely pitiful. That is the same amount of damage as Void Hole, and Void Hole is not known for its damage. Furthermore, with the damage build-up mechanic, it seems to be both absolutely pitiful and actually not working at the same time. I don't know how this has happened. With the math that is currently stated in the description where you build up 100 damage per second, what that means is that after half a minute, or 150 flux, you only build up 3,000 damage. Now 3,000 damage is actually less than 1 second's worth of Shatter Burst, and that's before we get into the whole thing about potentially shooting enemy fighters to massively ramp up the damage burst of Shatter Burst. The build up, to me, needs to increase tenfold at least, 20-fold even. The build up needs to increase a whole lot, especially since it's building up heat damage apparently, which is easily mitigated by armor, especially the alloy armor of the enemy fighter ships. I think the end goal is if you build up 20 seconds worth of damage, which means using 100 flux as part of the drain, plus an additional 50 as part of the activation, so that's a grand total of 150 flux. You should be able to nuke every single elite cutter and every single elite tactus, because they're both the slightly less tanky ships. And then maybe the flaks as well. But you should be able to nuke a bunch of ships by building up damage for 20 seconds and burning through 150 flux. That's a lot of flux. And also with regards to the energy drain, in my opinion, 1 per second is preferable, 2 per second is acceptable, 3 per second is really pushing it, 5 per second is outrageous. Alternatively, if DE wants to turn this ability into the big boy tankiness and speed ability, which I would probably recommend, then let's increase those stats, because those stats are also rather pitiful at the moment. The extra 20% speed is actually less than Flowburn. Flowburn gives you an additional 30% speed for 10 seconds on a 240 second cooldown. So yes, while Fiery Phoenix is giving you less speed for more time because it's essentially infinite duration, provided you can find enough flux energy, the value proposition is warped in the favor of Flowburn at this particular moment in time. If we just compare 10 seconds of Fiery Phoenix to 10 seconds of Flowburn, that is 50 flux from the Fiery Phoenix drain plus 50 flux on activation. Now that's a grand total of 100 flux for 20% speed, as opposed to Flowburn's essentially free 30% speed for that 10 seconds before you then jump on a 200% cooldown. So like I said, I do value flux energy above a lot of things. This also includes cooldowns. So in my opinion, I think you should at least match the speed of Flowburn, so that's an extra 30% speed, or actually go even better because you are spending energy. You should be getting a better speed. I reckon maybe plus 50% speed, let's make it a fast boy. And on top of that, I don't think just pure damage mitigation is enough to justify this kind of ability. I think it needs an additional mechanic, and I would recommend the rage mechanic. The good old-fashioned take hull damage, get energy mechanic. At least then we might be able to mitigate, if not justify, the absurd 5 energy a second drain. And then actually I would have no problem with that 5 energy per second drain. And finally, if this really is meant to be the super duper tanky extra speed ability, you might as well lose that damage build up, it's pointless. You might as well also lose that trail damage, it's pointless as well. Instead, I would probably recommend making that trail some sort of a utility trail, like for example a 100% particle drop trail, at least then any fighter ships that happen to stray into that flaming trail will then take extra damage for the next however many seconds. And then of course there's always the pipe dream option, which is ¿Por qué no los dos? So that is the current state of Fiery Phoenix, and hopefully we will see some changes to this ability. This one in particular needs some love. Seeker Volley does also need some love, but it clearly doesn't need as much love as this one, because this one is just simply terrible. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. If you have any questions about Fiery Phoenix, feel free to leave them in the comments and I will try to get to them as soon as possible, as always. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Warframe content, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye!